Hello.
Hello,
Welcome to the DC Corner for December 7th. I'm Ed.
I'm Will.
And today we're going to talk about three books that really break the mold for the New 52 and one book that should never have been left behind when the New 52 started. That book, of course, is Secret Six, which I can't wait to talk about.
And I can because I have patience.
So we'll get to it in just a little bit. But we'll start with Gotham Academy, which is set in a preparatory school in Gotham. It's a very different book with an interesting set of characters. Becky Cloonan and Brendan Fletcher Wright with Carl Kerschel doing the artwork. We'll show you a little bit of the cover of the first issue right here. The main character is Olive Silverlock. We don't know a whole lot about her except that something really strange happened between her freshman and sophomore years. And
Involving her mom and a hospital.
right, her mom is in Arkham right now, and we know that she has an alternate personality, the mother does, called Calamity. We don't know much more than that, but there's a lot of mysteries at the Academy itself, including something going on at the Old North Hall that has yet to be fully explored. Really neat artwork. Really, the first issue is very strong.
Yeah, it's the problem with talking about this comic is that there's not a lot to talk about. It does a lot of things right and doesn't do a lot of things wrong.
It's true.
It's consistently well drawn, well inked, well colored. There's not really. I have nothing to complain about. Well, not nothing, but near nothing to complain
That's
about,
true.
which is new for. I mean, I know this is like our third episode together, but it's still fairly new. One thing I do think that could be done better is the pacing. Issue 1 is amazing. It sets up all the
fantastic.
characters. It sets up the main mystery, etc., so forth. But issues 2 and 3 feel a lot like they're continuing to set up, and I went with it for issue 2, but I felt strange as issue 3 continued to set up the setting, the characters, and the adding more characters and mystery, and it felt like the issues 2 and 3 could have been combined.
That's the big thing there. They could have been combined. Now, still, good books. Can't wait to see what issue 4 is going to be like. But issue 2 and 3 fell just a little bit from issue 1. Not too far.
Yeah, I mean, that's to be expected. I think that they could have saved a lot of time by foregoing Batman. And it's not that Batman is bad in here, it's just that he takes up a lot of the comic, and that we know that the mystery of Olive has to do with something traumatic involving something that hospitalized her mother. And so, since we know that Batman basically acts with complete impunity in the DC universe, we know that he's not at fault. So we know that either the mother, the girl, or a third party is going to be the culprit behind the traumatic event from the past. So it feels like that we're wasting time by constantly having her have flashbacks to her fear of Batman.
Now, that may change as we get farther into the plot. We'll see. They do handle an early appearance well.
Yeah, but it's just they just keep putting him in there. But here's the one thing I do like. This is the one appearance I like, and it has Bruce Wayne doing a speech that feels somewhat compulsory and dry, and then something fun happens in the background, and then he goes to check on Olive afterwards, and that I felt was a good cameo. It didn't take away from the story. It helped further things a little bit, since Batman is part of the story, even if just tangentially. So it felt very clean, as opposed to every other instance where there's a bat signal in the sky, or someone's
Or
having
him hidden in the background, just basically, I'm Batman.
Yeah, and it feels odd, and it feels out of place. And honestly, this comic could probably stand on its own entirely without Batman at all.
It truly does. That's the neat thing here. You've got a great set of characters. The secondary characters are well developed. The primary characters are well developed. This is a neat group of kids that they brought together for the school. I really enjoy how they're developing. It's a very diverse group that's in there. Really well written overall. I like it. Now, this is sort of the thing you get when you're dealing with DC now. Batman sells, so everything is Batman.
But we'll get to that a little bit in the next comic.
You got it.
We're going to be talking, actually, the comic after this.
Right, Arkham Manor. Where what's happened here, of course, is in Batman Eternal, Arkham Asylum has blown up. Batman's assets, or at least Bruce Wayne's assets, have been all frozen and taken over by the city of Gotham, and they have used eminent domain to turn Wayne Manor into a temporary Arkham until they can rebuild the actual Arkham Asylum. Batman snuck in as a patient to deal with a murder that happens almost as soon as the place opens up.
Now, the artwork here is very, very good. There's a very good sketchiness to it,
Yes.
but I feel like they take it a bit too far in some places, to the point where it feels a little first-year art student-y. And that's my only real complaint about the art. My main problems are with the story. First of all, it starts out with Arkham blowing up. That's
Right.
first thing.
Which, that comes from Batman Eternal.
And then we have this reactionary chain of events where people are going, not in my backyard, in regards to housing of these of the criminally insane. And so it feels...
Although in their defense, who would want the Joker and everybody else living in their backyard?
But with the caricatures used to communicate that idea,
True.
it carries the message that we're supposed to disagree with these characters, as they are, again, caricatures.
Right.
And then we have Batman sort of semi-disagreeing with them, saying, well, this is what my dad would have wanted, so I will house them. And but I don't have to like it. But it feels like it contradicts the earlier part where even Batman doesn't want these people. And it feels dishonest on top of that, because if he thought Mr. and Mrs. Wayne would have wanted anything, he would just drop everything to do it because that's what they would have wanted. That's part of his central character. That's why he's on this huge revenge quest, is because his parents died. So
Now,
it feels disingenuous.
Now, all of this, though, they've tried to figure out some way to turn the manor into Arkham, and so it's a little convoluted to get there. Once they get there, it's not quite as bad.
But I think that the best part of setting that up was a scene just after that with Alfred, where Alfred's saying, well, it wasn't just the Wayne's home, it was my home too, and it hurts to see it like this. And having Batman and Alfred having this exchange felt like it could have easily replaced the last couple pages where that were almost entirely unnecessary.
And really, in all of the Bat books lately, Alfred has really stepped once again to the forefront as being maybe the most awesome Bat character there is.
Alfred Pennyworth is just an amazing character all around whenever he's written and portrayed as as well as he is here. But going along that vein, there is one thing I really liked about Arkham Manor #1, and that is when Batman first arrives at Arkham Manor, and then there's this dichotomy shown of Bruce as a child versus Batman walking through the halls of the new asylum, and it's kind of heartbreaking. And,
it is.
And I really like it that it's a departure from the grim dark, I'm there for revenge, I'm always right, and I'm going to get you. And that, he was even in the same issue where a few pages earlier he uses excessive force on a couple of criminals he'd already caught.
Let's talk about that a second, because that really bothered me too. Batman, yes, will beat the crap out of the bad guys, but he doesn't just do it for the fun of it. And it appears like he was doing it
or at least just to let off steam.
Yeah.
And that's not his character. He is driven by vengeance, but a very calculated vengeance, a vengeance that goes by a code. And he will only, and once he captures you, he's done with you unless you try to pull something funny. Then you might get additional beatings.
But this time not.
But they didn't do anything.
Just went after him.
Yeah, he just tore into them. But that also, and that also is in stark contrast to the end of the book, where Batman actually investigates things. The greatest detective of the entire universe barely does any detective work in any of the cartoons, any of the video games, any of the comics. He just intuits everything. It's not even just the old days where, the Riddler left us a puzzle. What is it, Robin? And Robin's like, oh, well, it's this.
Right.
I'm going to turn it to this clue, which means that the Riddler and the Joker are here.
But there is some real detective work going on, and he's in there in his Matches Malone persona, although using a different name. And I like that. It's okay.
But I think that when the minute he goes into Matches Malone, he stops investigating, and it goes back to plot point for plot point plot point, where he just intuits things.
Yeah.
Well, you're going into issue 2, though.
Right, which is this right here.
Now, we're on the apparent hunt for Zaz. I don't know who Zaz is. Do you know who Zaz is?
Yeah, I don't know who Zaz is. I mean, he kills people and he puts marks on himself. But the thing is, you don't know why they're after Zaz. It's sort of
or even that Zaz was even there in the first place.
Someone died. Zaz isn't handy. Let's go find him.
And it just feels very weird that we go from actual investigating to just the next plot point. I mean, there's no A to B, and we don't need to see every little thing where it's like an Ed Wood driving scene.
But you'd like to see a little bit more than what was going on there. There is a good scene though in.
Oh yeah, the group therapy scene.
The group therapy scene is just awesome. You get to see the characters being themselves, and
we have like Amygdala, Scarecrow, and Mr. Freeze, and they all contribute. They're all funny, and it feels like it moves the narrative along. That maybe Batman can get to know these people that he locks up as people, people with problems, as opposed to just stepping stones to crush on his path to vengeance. But I feel like they dropped that as soon as the group therapy scene is over. I would like to see some of that more
more.
But they cut that off with. Do you have a Bat story? No, I don't have a Batman story. I've never met the guy. Well, he knows your name now because he knows everybody's name. And then it cuts to, they're right. I do know all their names. Yeah. I keep track of all of them. I know their exact height, weight, and measurements.
You better watch out. You better not cry. Batman is watching.
And it feels that not only is Batman not learning anything from the experience, which feels weird since he's supposed to be the most intelligent character of the series, but it's just that it feels weird that we start these. And that's what really Arkham Manor does worse, is that it makes good narrative strides to just contradict itself 1 or 2 pages later.
Now, all this being said, issue 1 was fairly strong, but the drop off from issue 1 to 2 was a much bigger drop off.
It was just drastic.
The drop off in Gotham Academy not so much, but in this one there was a huge drop off.
There was extraneous scenes, like there's this dude in a wheelchair. And we don't know who it is. Well, we might find out who it is because the setup is, who are you? I know who you are. And then Batman goes to tell one of the employees to go get him, and so we never see it again. So we can assume that he got the guy, and they're done. So what was that for? And then we have the shoehorned little panel with Olive's mother, aka Calamity. From Gotham Academy, but it doesn't feel natural to Gotham, to Arkham Manor, and it feels shoehorned in, and it feels like that they tried to do a little sneaky advertisement, but that's what the back pages are for. That's what the interim ad pages are for, and it doesn't feel like it helps anything.
I'm more comfortable with that because in some respects what they are trying to do is sort of have a unified bat first and sort of place this book's setting in it. Now, if they kept doing this, I would be pretty upset with it. But for one thing it
just doesn't feel.
It didn't bother me.
But it's part of a pattern of other things that have little to no significance that are just dropped. The Not in My Backyard storyline dropped. The actual investigation dropped. Seth, the pumpkin dude from the beginning of issue 2,
he's sort of brought in to be.
He's brought in to be a victim, and so he has no. We can assume he has no further relevance unless they're going to bring him back to have him and show that maybe there is a chance at redemption for some of the Arkham Manor residents. But it doesn't look like that. It's just things coming and going, and just to serve this really.
I know.
Lackluster mystery.
Now, our hope for the next issue on this would be get back to more detective work, and if they could bring more of the development in like they did with the group therapy session.
And consistency. Consistency.
That would be pretty
If you were consistently awful, that would be nice. If you're consistently good, that would be nice. Pick one, go with it.
Now, that being said, I'll still be reading the next issue, but I'm hoping we'll see something more from issue 3 than we did in issue 2.
Because I honestly started with very high hopes for this because while Arkham Manor #1 wasn't the greatest book of all time, it was good enough for me to be interested in the next issue. So if number 3 isn't doesn't pick up the pace a bit, I'm going to drop it.
Oh, and fair enough. Now that brings us to the next book,
Gotham by Midnight.
Now this one.
It wins love by daylight, never running from a real fight. He is the one called the Spectre.
Now, Ray Fox is writing it, who's really good, and Ben Templesmith, who's really well known in some indie books, does the artwork. I'm a big fan of Ben Templesmith. Now, I first became aware of him in some of his early issues of 10 Grand. He has a very distinctive style of artwork, and I really enjoy that.
It's very watercolor-esque.
Now, the first page of this book,
it's amazing.
It is one of the most
actually
awesome...
the beginning pages, the first page especially, but the beginning pages are consistently well drawn.
That first page is one of the most awesome first pages I've ever seen in any book ever. If you want to establish the feel of this supernatural book, that's how you want to start.
And it really does good at establishing, better than this internal agent that comes in as this framing device / audience surrogate, so we could be guided through this new world.
Yeah, our internal affairs is being brought in to shut this place down, and we're going to scare the pants off of him.
Yeah, and it just feels weird because they keep asking him, are you a religious man? And I'm thinking, okay, what religion? Because we have the Greek pantheon, we have some of the Egyptian pantheon, we have heavy Judeo-Christian themes in almost every superhero.
Not to mention the new gods.
Yeah, and so, like, what religion am I supposed to be paying attention to? Not to mention the fact that Zatanna is well known. At least, like, Black Adam and Shazam are well known. Raven has to be at least somewhat well known. I can maybe buy that people don't generally know about Dr. Fate. Maybe.
But, yeah, well, and because in this continuity, Dr. Fate's on Earth too, but in this book, really, the artwork is a strong point. The
story
plot,
is not.
The plot's a little weak, and that's surprising because Ray's a really great writer, but it's just
that, yeah, because it feels like that we're being led through this world as if we had been completely isolated from it. And while it might be great for a new reader who hasn't ever heard of anything DC related, it feels condescending. Like, do you know that there's something going on? There's something going on, and we're gonna teach you because you don't know squat.
Right. So now we do see some interesting depictions here of Jim Corrigan, aka the Spectre.
Now this caught me by surprise because I thought, as you can see from here, that this glowy hand meant it was Proto-Blight, from Batman Beyond. And, he had somehow found the exact mix of chemicals that would later be used in Batman Beyond for Blight, but it was the Spectre, and I'm used to the depiction of the Spectre being a normal dude that's brought back from the dead, and ghost sidekick Spectre that's
with the green hood and the green cape.
So I'm not, and so when Batman goes, do they know about the Spectre? And I'm like, where is he?
Now, I like this depiction of him. It is a great departure.
But it confuses people that aren't familiar with Jim Corrigan. And since the Spectre does jump around from host to host, it feels like an inconsistency. I can be wrong here, but I've never seen the glowy hand, so I assumed that it was a different
I'm not sure
person.
I've seen the glowy hand either, although I thought it was an interesting artistic choice. And if you're going for
I didn't,
different,
yeah, and it was nice, but I just didn't catch on it was the Spectre. Speaking of Batman in this issue, he is entirely irrelevant. His entire appearance is...
right here.
Yeah, his entire appearance is, oh, hey, I brought the evidence that you needed. I couldn't use the internet for it. Why couldn't we use the internet? And so, and that's the bulk of it. And so that's
the thing with all of these books here that are tied to the Batverse. You've got, let's think about all the Bat books we got. You got Batman, you got Batman Eternal, you got Detective, you've got Batgirl, Batwoman, Teen Titans technically because it's really Red Robin.
Bat.
Red Hood and the Outlaws.
Batmite.
Oh, well,
Bat Could.
You're waiting for the new books. Which
Bat
would be
Would.
like Bat Flash, Bat Titans, Bat Arrow.
Bat Credit Cards.
Wonder Bat. The Legion of Super Bats. You get it.
The Legion of Super Bat Pets.
It's almost like that old Monty Python skit about spam where you got bat, batity bat. It sells. I get that, and
it's not. And I have nothing against using a bigger name to help sell a smaller name, but doing it consistently to the point where it's overshadowing pre-existing characters that have been around for a while that have a fan base and a following. It feels like they have no confidence in their own brand names, and so really this comic should have been called The Spectre. But no, it's Gotham by Midnight.
But once you call it Gotham by Midnight, do you really have to put Batman in there to prove that it's in Gotham?
And not even that. It's just that, like, if you keep doing this, it really shows that DC only thinks that Batman sells. DC thinks that without Batman, a comic will not sell. and that if every superhero doesn't adhere to this Batman formula of perpetually single on a quest of justice or revenge or what have you, in this constant toil that is fraught with darkness, it's going to induce not only darkness-induced apathy, where we just get used to it and don't care anymore about the darkness, but it's basically bat vandalism.
It's sort of the strange dichotomy of these three books here, because when the New 52 first hit, there was definite house style of art, a house style of storytelling. Everything was very grim, dark. Everything very much influenced by the Batverse in that respect. So now you've got.
But I don't even think this is this is not the New 52. This is the Brave and the Bold.
Well, that's the thing is you've got two things going on here. You've got books that are purposely meant to break the mold. A very different art style, a very different storytelling style.
One of them more successful than the other.
Right, but at the same time, they're afraid to get out on that ledge without anchoring themselves back in the Batverse, because bats do sell. I mean, you look at the diamond charts, Batman sells, but it's like they're afraid to make the full leap.
But DC, listen to me here. You're good enough. We know you have this one talent, but you have other talents. You are good enough. You have it in your side of yourself. Believe in yourself, DC, because we believe in you.
Absolutely.
Please get help.
Okay, now, later in the book, there are some differences in terms of the art style that we've been talking back and forth about a lot.
Well, it's just that it loses consistency entirely, and it's particularly with the hands, as you'll see here on Lisa Drake, who we'll talk about in a second. It's just that the hands go from a definite sketchy watercolor, really nicely well drawn, to these gnarled little claws on everybody that even aren't supposed to have claws.
And I'm not as bothered by that. Overall, I still love the artwork. And again, I'm a Temple Smith fan. So
if this was a deadline issue, just extend the deadline. It's just they could, or hire an underling artist to work under him, because it's just that.
Although I'm going back to in my mind to some of the 10 Grand books, and I think he did. I think this is more his style, and you can disagree with the style.
But if you're going for a style, keep it consistent. Just if you don't keep a style consistent, in a way that isn't improving over time, it sends the message of either that there was a time crunch, or they just didn't care. And honestly, I would rather believe that it was a time crunch, because this dude definitely cares.
He definitely cares. He's put a lot of himself into the artwork. I like it overall. And actually, strange enough to say, since we're talking about the hands and disagreeing about that part, the artwork really is the strength of this issue.
It is, and I like the style and overall.
The characters, there are a couple that we really like.
Though I think that there could have been a bit more variety in color at times. When you're setting the mood with these full pages where every panel is like the same, like 3 blues. And I get that when you're trying to establish a mood, but it lacks, ends up lacking variety, and it feels bereft of color.
Well, that's the part though. If you've read 10 Grand or some of the other books, I know I'll keep going back to that one book. He's in quite a few other books, but that's more the style you get with him. He's using the colors to set the mood rather than trying to individually color each part of each picture.
But as someone who's played,
I like it.
But as someone who's played a lot of video games, I am not only too used but tired of the same 4 colors being in every single work for it to be realistic and gritty. We can have more colors than blood, concrete gray, dirt brown, and muzzle flash.
But this thing works for me. He's setting a supernatural mood. For me, I like the color choices. Now,
I like the color choices to an extent, but I feel like there could be more variety to it.
But where we do agree is on the characters.
Yeah, and it tends to be consistently well drawn at the beginning.
But now the 2 characters, Jim Corrigan.
Yeah, Jim Corrigan, we don't really get to know him a lot. There's only one character we really get to know, and that's the only character that stands out, because apart from her, Lisa Drake. We get internal affairs that's going to shut them down, and he's just the arbitrary skeptic that's just there to be a skeptic. Sister Justine, she's just there to be the nun and the spiritual expert, which feels weird that a nun has to be an expert necessarily, because there are, again, the Greek pantheon, the Egyptian pantheon, and other sorts of magic out there than just that. And then we have the scientist character for this sort of ramshackle SCP Foundation esque group here. And so, but we don't really get to know them beyond their archetypes, where the nun is sort of reserved, the scientist likes testing things, and he's sort of funny, and then the Jim Corrigan's partner, whose main characteristic is being a jerk.
So let's see what happens in the next issue. I'm hoping to see something more, but
I really like seeing more of Lisa Drake because they cut her off. There was a scene in there where it was really getting into the characterization, where it's like. Where it gets into the moral ambiguity of the series, where it's like, when I was a kid, I saw a policeman save someone, and I thought it would be so simple, so that's why I joined the force, and then it cuts off, and it feels like half of a scene. It was a great half of a scene, but I wanted to see the rest of that scene. So I really hope that they spend more time on characterization the next issue, because what they have so far isn't that great. And because of Lisa Drake alone, I am willing to give the second issue a shot, but other than that, I don't have high hopes for the comic.
And frankly, it's the artwork that's bringing me back now. I'm an old Spectre fan from way, way, way back
And I like the Spectre too, because that was one of my first comics that I used to read from Dad's collection, was the Spectre.
But we'll see what happens next issue. That one's just got one issue out. Now, that brings us to...
Finally!
The Secret Six. Now... I am a huge Gail Simone fan. She is my favorite writer. And
I'm actually a bit of a fan of Gail Simone too, though I know her more from her site, Women in Refrigerators, and from the episode she wrote in Justice League Unlimited that had The Question, Huntress, Oliver Queen, and the Black Canary. And it was a great episode all around, easily in the top 20.
Now, this is a fan favorite book people have been waiting for a long time, and it's a different Secret Six in some respects, and there's a different premise to start. We do see some familiar characters and some characters who were not in Secret Six last time around, but obviously we start with Catman, who was, frankly, a joke of a character before Gail Simone started working with him. In this case, though, instead of being sent off on a mission, they're being captured one by one and brought to some strange place to try to figure out what is the secret?
Sort of like a Zero Escape meets the Secret Six.
Yeah.
For those of you unfamiliar, look it up. It's a good game series. 9 hours, 9 people, 9 doors, and Zero Escape, Virtue's Last Reward. Buy both games. Encourage the third game to be made, because honestly, I would like to have that closure.
And there are some real similarities to that. Now, the artwork is really good. Ken Lashley's doing the artwork. I really like, especially in the early pages, this is really good artwork. And you get to see, at first, the capture of Catman and bringing him to this place. Now, at the same time, there were some things...
Yeah, and the art is good, but one of the few things I can complain about here are the formatting. Now, take a look at this panel here. Zoom that in just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's talking here? And it feels weird because you're kind of scorching hot, you know that? Sorry. And then the next panel's like, I'm more of a dog person, and
but you don't know who's saying. It's like,
who's saying? We can infer that she said the sorry. I'm more of a dog person, and that Catman said you're kind of scorching hot.
But both word balloons pointed to her and not to him.
Yeah, and so it was. I had to figure. It was only retroactively that I figured that out, and I shouldn't have had to do that retroactively. I should have just been able to go, oh, look, it's that person saying that person saying that. Formatting is a very important part, but
there are 2 or 3 places where that happened.
And it's a very small gripe. If you'll get to the other place where it happens, it's where the introduction of Strix. Now, it's from now for those of us that read American comics or just Western comics in general, we know it's left to right, top to bottom. But from here, we get his exchange of, who are you? I assume you do something right. And then, who are you? I'm Strix. Oh, you can't see me pointing. But
the thing is, he's saying first, okay, Strix. He's read it at the top before you read it next to it. Now,
and it feels clunky.
But again, that's just a little bit of the formatting. Now, overall, it's interesting.
Overall, it's great. And I'm just saying, but it's so good that those little minor things pop out a lot worse because it's so good.
Now, there's some interesting characters that are brought into this. Strix, for example, who came from the Court of Owls and was in Batgirl for some time, and more of an anti-hero than anything else.
And we have the ventriloquist from the recent Gail Simone Batgirl rendition.
And you've got a character named Porcelain that I was not as familiar with. You've got Black Alice, who's another Gelsumon creation, who's obviously still channeling Zatanna's powers here. You've got a guy named Big Shot. You've got an interesting group of characters here to get started with. And we had some disagreement in terms of
the ending.
I'll show you a page here that Will's thinking was the perfect ending spot.
Now, right here is where it's like, what is the secret as the big question, and that you need to answer this. And Catman's like, well, I can't stay here cooped up like this. Something's going to happen, something really bad. And that would have been a great leadoff. But instead, we get a few more panels of introducing characters, showing what happened to one of the captors, and then it ends with the ventriloquist showing the puppet. And it feels like if you take all of that at the end, after that, what is the secret, and establish that someone might die if the question's not answered. What is the question? What are we supposed to be doing? I don't know. And then all of a sudden on the screen, what is the secret? I gotta get out of here. Something bad's gonna happen real bad. That would have been a great cliffhanger and segue into the next issue. But I feel like one of the weaknesses of this issue, one of the few weaknesses, is that it ends on that they haven't answered the question fast enough. So the automated voice says that someone has to be chosen to die, and they're like, oh, well, it has to be one of the 6 of us. And the ventriloquist pulls out her puppet and says, no, you miscounted. There's 7. It feels, it doesn't feel organic. It doesn't flow well.
Now, I'm okay with it. And here's the deal to me is a lot of first issues here, and this issue really is 99 to 44 100% set up for the series.
And I don't mind that.
But there's a couple of ways you can do it. And the more formulaic way is to say character, 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 character. Now we have a conflict, and here's our scary thing. And instead what she's doing is breaking it up. We get introduced to some of the characters. We have the conflict. We move the conflict forward a little bit, and through that we get introduced to some more characters. And then the cliffhanger then again is who's going to die. So for me, I'm okay with it. I see where you're coming from, but for me, it didn't really bother me that much. And
I don't disagree with you necessarily, but I think that if they were going to go with that to break it up, even if the ending I suggested being at the what is the secret part, they could have chosen a stronger ending point for this issue than what they ended with.
I think what I really wish for this book is that they had been able to have a bigger page count.
Yeah.
This was a good, credible start to the series. I'm excited.
But that's sort of my problem with Western comics as opposed to manga is that when we get these chapter by chapters, it feels like I'm getting half of an episode of a show as opposed to an entire episode most of the time.
All I can tell you
and that's why I don't why I like the
trade paperbacks.
That's why I like the trade paperbacks better. And that's why I like manga volumes where it has the chapters all in a row. And even with collections like Shonen Jump, you have one chapter of a manga that's going to draw people in because of the name recognition. See, DC, this is how you do name recognition well. You get the draw in with that name for their own story within their own book for one chapter, and then you have one chapter of a bunch of other stories, and so you have that draw bringing in the other stories, and if they read the other stories, they might get interested in those other stories.
Which takes you back to the anthology books, and
I think that.
Unfortunately, there's not a lot of anthologies out there. Dark Horse does an anthology.
But I think that
I would love to see a DC
but I would like to see the format of either Detective Comics universe, the compilation where you have a chapter of Superman, a chapter of Wonder Woman, a chapter of Batman, and a chapter of some other titles that you want to do in, and do it like that, or by releasing full story arcs at a time in volumes, because otherwise I feel.
We're getting a far field.
Well, I know we're getting far afield here, but I do want to discuss this in that I do think that it makes it easier for stories to be complete without a lot of interference from other stories where things have to suddenly change because something happens in another comic. It encourages it lets writers to let their hair down fully, and it helps consistency out in the story, and which would ultimately help out continuity.
Here's the only thing though is it comes down to price point, what people can afford to buy, and that's the thing.
But it would only cost about $5 more.
that's still a lot of money. You know, you're talking about the average comics reader is not having a lot of money to spend. No one's really buying, or almost no one is buying the entire New 52. You've got to budget wisely. So there's got to be a real reason to spend more. Now, some folks don't buy single issues; they wait for the trades for exactly the reason you're talking about. But
you don't get a trade for everything because the trades only come with the popular books.
But true, and that's the other problem here is if you don't support your single issue ones, they never do a trade in the first place. Now, Secret Six obviously will be one of those that'll make it.
Right, of course. I mean, Gail Simone's a great writer, and you know,
I'm going to fanboy out for this book. Honestly, the fact that Secret Six is back, the fact that she's writing it, I would probably go nuts for this book if it was.
I'm already going a little bit nuts for this book just because I hate that being cut off at midpoint in the story.
But I love this. I'm glad it's back.
But that's just my problem with the format of the Western comics in general, as opposed to just with an issue with the Secret Six.
But I love this book. I'm really glad it's back. I was actually one of the later ones to come back. I actually went back to get the original Villains United and then the later runs of Secret Six and realized just what I had missed out on. And this will be very interesting to see what all happens if we actually do lose someone next issue, who that person will be replaced by. And there's so much to be gained here just by hanging around.
Well, I actually don't think that someone will die in the next issue, mostly just because it's Gail Simone writing it. I don't think, and especially the female characters, I don't think she would fridge one of her own characters.
But I could see maybe Big Shot going down. We'll see. We'll see. And one thing's for sure.
But then again, no one actually really dies in this in the DC universe.
Oh, you haven't been. Trust me.
Please, the DC universe is one large groundhog.
Now I'm just saying they don't stay dead.
Well, yes,
but
I'm just saying that's my point. Is that the entirety of DC is one long Groundhog's Day loop.
Well,
actually, that would actually make a great story arc. Is just that like them realizing it's a Groundhog Day loop.
You could say that about Marvel as well.
Well, you could say that about but that's just how the two major publishers are.
True.
But I'm just saying.
All that said, to come back here to Secret Six, great start. Other than we'd like to see more.
Yeah.
And really, out of all the books, the remaining books, Gotham Academy definitely was the strongest of the other.
Yeah, I honestly say. Actually, I want to say that mostly because it had the head start is why I like Gotham Academy more. And I feel like that once each book is done, that I probably might like Secret Six better. But because of its further completion, and that I feel like I'm a bit more invested in the characters in Gotham Academy. Because of that, I've had that time that currently I like Gotham Academy better, but I have high hopes for Secret Six to surpass it. So
that's it for right now, guys. We're going to see a lot more in the coming week here. We will be back next week with some more of the DC Corner, so keep watching for us. And be sure to stay tuned later tonight for the regular Comics Week in Review on tmstash.com. Be checking in with us throughout the week for all the news, reviews, and commentary. Thanks for hanging around, guys.